everyone, this is Tamara from shelfaddiction.com, and welcome to episode 168. Tonight on Book Chat, I am interviewing author Shayne Leighton. Shayne has over a decade of experience in the entertainment and publishing industries. Shayne's a creative professional with edge and quirkiness. She's also the author of YA fantasy title of Light and Darkness. Fun fact, her favorite book is The Night Circus, though it soon may be Six of Crows. Tonight, Shayne and I will be discussing the evolution of series characters, and she'll be filling us in on her series of Light and Darkness. All of Shayne's social media links are below in the show notes, so if you'd like to connect, you know where to find her. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and share it. Show your support by rating the podcast and leaving a positive review on Apple Podcast or your listening app of choice. If you'd like to comment on something you hear during today's episode, you can find me on Twitter at Shelf Addiction. If you'd like to email in feedback or questions, feel free to reach out to me at info@shelfaddiction.com or call in and leave an internet voice message via SpeakPipe or the Anchor app. The links are below in the show notes. Hey Shayne, thanks for joining me today. How have you been?
Hi, Tamara. Thanks so much for having me. I've been doing really wonderfully, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. I am super excited about our conversation today because you may not know this about me, but I am a hardcore series reader. I love series.
Oh, that's wonderful. I didn't know that, so that's excellent.
Yes. So not only do I love series, I love urban fantasy, fantasy, and paranormal romance. That's like my wheelhouse. Those are my favorite genres ever.
Oh, I love
so
to
you
hear
fit
that.
into that. Yeah, you fit into that perfectly. So
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, this will be a good fit then. This sounds great.
Absolutely. So, okay, so we're talking about today, everyone, the evolution of a series character. Basically, how we're going to keep them interesting for us, the reader, how the author keeps them interesting for us. And, you know, especially when dealing with fantasy. Like, for example, I know when I read a lot of fantasy, there's tons of vampires and werewolves that are very, very, very old. So,
Yes.
Shayne, what do you think? How do you go about, you know, keeping those type of characters interesting when they're so old and stuck in their ways?
Well, I always think that it's really interesting, you know, like you said, especially when you're dealing with vampires or any kind of character that's supposed to be immortal. You know, when you stick a character like that in the modern day, I think it always gets really interesting because they're almost forced to develop and forced to evolve to accommodate themselves to the here and now, you know, so that's what I really like. I think that's really interesting. You know, for instance, when Anne Rice took Lestat, which everybody knows and loves Lestat, he's one of my favorite characters, and you know, she stuck him into the 1980s rock culture. I just think that was genius because the dichotomy of those two things and you know, like the vast differences of those two things married together, I think make for a very interesting dynamic experience with your character. And so I think that's my favorite way to, you know, keep an older immortal character interesting and not so dusty like your grandpa or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you know, it's always funny, like even when, you know, like let's use Lestat for an example. Even when he's in that different, more modern time, he still has a lot of old things about him, like old ways about him. And I think that kind of keeps it interesting as well. So you see like this little difference that just doesn't quite match up, but it's kind of, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I just think that it makes the experience a lot of fun. And so in my series of Light and Darkness, I have a vampire that's kind of akin to Lestat, although he's a little bit more like Louis because he's very emotional and brooding. So, you know, you have that experience that he's, you know, 200 years old and he's navigating modern day Prague, and he's got his counterpart by his side, Charlotte, his romantic interest, and she is of course of the modern day. And though what's interesting and what's a little bit different about Of Light and Darkness is she kind of grew up around his culture and his ancientness. So she, even though she's, you know, a human and she is of the modern day, she acts the way he does. So now we have two fish out of water who are kind of teamed up and kind of trying to help each other blind through this modern world. And so I think that even makes their time a little bit more hysterical. Charlotte needs to learn how to drive a car. She's never been inside of a car. In the third book that happens and things like that. And so, yeah, I think that makes for an interesting reader experience as well.
Yeah. Are there any other, tools of the trade that you use to keep the characters fresh outside of just changing the time they're in?
It's just, I think the more human you keep them, the more interesting they are. At the end of the day, what makes these monsters relatable and what makes us keep turning these pages is because we still relate to them, even though in some ways they are so unrelatable. So I try to put into play a lot of those literary devices, touch, hearing, smell, whatever, what are their emotional experiences, what are their intellectual experiences, what connects them to their human foundation, because at the end of the day, human beings will always be interesting because we are so complex. And so as long as our characters remain complex, I think no matter how old they are or how long they've been around this world, they will always have new experiences and they will always learn something and they'll always be interesting.
Mm-hmm. So, I also really like when I can care about the characters for the entire duration of a series, even a really long series, because, some of them get really long, like this one series I'm reading. I think the 16th book comes out this year, and another one is I just finished up 10 books. I'd like to know how you think authors should go about keeping the characters fresh and exciting over long haul series. Sometimes it gets a little boring after 5 or 6 books. So,
Definitely.
what do you think?
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. And as a reader, I've experienced it before. And I actually think this is a really good question. Because, I think series are popular now. I think a lot of us are realizing that readers like it when we extend a series for a long time. The Light and Darkness series itself is a planned 7 books. So, I have my work cut out for me for sure. But I think, I think the way to keep authors from, as you said, dialing it in or from things to prevent, from getting stagnant with your characters too much is if you really keep those, those things in their way, those problems, those trials, as long as you keep those fast paced and fresh and interesting. And I kind of joke and say authors are mean because we just throw a lot at our characters. We force them to go through all of these tumultuous situations and give them all of these objectives. And I think as we keep doing that, I think our characters will stay fresh and interesting because, when you think about the course of life, it's kind of like a long series. We are made to traverse this life throughout all of our various problems, and life is always changing, right? So in many ways, our characters are living their own life, and it's not going to always be perfect all of the time. And I think that, when authors tie up the end of each book in their series with like a neat little bow, kind of solve all of the problems. I think when they do that, then it's very easy to get stagnant. But as long as you kind of, in a way, keep playing God and kill off a family member or, take their lover and sever their head. I mean, it doesn't have to be all that bad. But I think as long as you keep creating problems for your characters, just like we are in our lives, the characters will keep growing and keep learning and keep becoming more dynamic and building these layers and changing and evolving to their own life situations. And then I think that's how you come up with really fabulous character development at the end of their series, because you look at this, person at the beginning of the story who has not gone through any of these horrible things yet, or these difficult things yet, and then you take the same person at the end of your story arc and you compare, and I think depending on, and I'm sorry, I also think that each novel is a reflection of that author, you know, because like I said, I think we do go through our own tribulations in our life. So I think we take our own character development, our personal character development, and kind of reflect it onto our characters. And I think as long as we do that, no matter how long our series becomes, I think they will remain interesting fake people.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I totally agree with that, like 100%, because I mean, if they don't go through it, the payoff at the end isn't as sweet. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Yeah. So even if it's a smaller arc, you know, over a long haul series, like you have a couple different arcs, maybe they get a little reprieve. They have a little happy ending 3 books in or something.
Yeah,
and then something tragic happens and here we go again. It's
right.
Okay. Yeah. I love that. So how do you work those into of light and dark? Like, do you have any of that going on? Like tell me how long your series is, what the plan is, and what readers can expect as far as longevity of your characters.
Definitely. I'd be more than happy to tell you that. I've been working on this series since 2011. I think the first edition of the first book came out back in 2011. And initially it was a planned series of 7 books, and I still maintain that it will be 7 books. And it's kind of funny because when I first sought out to write this series, I was much younger. I was about 19. And much like other 19-year-olds, you know, we think we know everything. And I thought I knew everything there was to know about writing and that it was perfect. And I was published with a small press, and then I actually obtained my rights back and republished it, you know, as a new edition. I self-published it and everything because I decided after rereading the first edition that I could do so much better. I could write the story so much better. I could make my characters more interesting and more dynamic and really help to set them up for what I was thinking about doing for the rest of the series. And initially, I don't think I did a good enough job of that. And so that's kind of why there has been this holdup. A lot of my readers have been asking me, "Where's book 4? Where's book 4? It's been, you know, a couple of years. You've been promising us a book 4. I swear on my life there will be a book 4. I am working on it actively. But like I said, the first 3 installments needed to undergo a couple of rewrites, so the rest of it was set up properly. As far as what I'm planning for my characters, I am a huge fan of J.K. Rowling. I cannot even imagine having a career as illustrious and fabulous as hers is. But with that said, one thing that I have kind of taken from her style is that I'm not afraid to kill off main characters. I'm not afraid to make the situation as realistic as possible. And not to scare anybody. I don't want to, you know, there's no spoilers at all in what I just said. I don't want anyone to like, oh, I'm not reading this anymore. You know,
oh no.
Yeah.
Right.
I promise you there's absolutely no spoilers in anything that I just said. But, you know, I think in the best writing, there is a perfect balance of harmony and tragedy. And like you said before, you need to give your characters somewhat of a reprieve, and those hills and valleys that we experience in reality, I think we should also experience in fiction. Because art, of course, imitates life. Sometimes life imitates art. But essentially, you know, you've got Charlotte and Volek, and as I stated before, they're the 2 central characters, and you know, they are the centrifuge of this massive uprising and this revolution, essentially overthrowing their corrupt government. And like, there's a lot of real life situations that come into play in my fantasy. I try to, you know, make my fantasy very parallel and with a lot of metaphors, you know, regarding what we are all actually experiencing. In reality.
It pertains to our government. Don't open that can of worms.
I know. I don't know if there's people in the message boards or wherever going, okay, I'm definitely not reading this. But no, I mean, it is just all a metaphor, and it is art at the end of the day. And of course it's objective, but, and anyway, so with all of that danger, of course, that comes along with things as heavy as those themes are, I am planning a lot more trials for them, and it's not been easy for them thus far. I've got to say, and it's not going to be easy for them, probably for a long time.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Just as long as you sprinkle some happiness in there so that people can just woosah, right? They get their moment and then, dump on them again. It's all good. We love it.
Of course. I've got to let you guys breathe a little bit. But one thing that I really love about this series, though, is that there are so many different kinds of creatures from Slavic mythology because it takes place in Prague. So one thing that I can definitely promise is that there's going to be a lot more of that kind of thing, a lot more kind of monsters pulled into, friendly monsters, obviously, pulled into the mix of what's going on. And I think that will bring forth the fun and, the fantasy that everybody really likes, along with all of the hard stuff too. So
cool. So tell me, what is the most unique paranormal creature that exists in the published books right now?
Well, there's two, and they happen to be my favorite characters. They're not the main characters, and that's surprising to a lot of people. But my favorite characters in the series are Mr. Trinoshka, and he is essentially I call him a were-spider. But he's not a man who changes into a spider. He's kind of a shifter who is perpetually stuck between his two phases, So he's got, so he's got like the elderly, he's an elderly man. He's an older character. He's kind of like the grandfather figure of the story. Very heavily based on my own grandfather. And so he's got this big giant knob mustache, and he smells of butterscotch, and he loves curating teas, and he's just warmth. He's just this great, kind of comedic relief, and I think he brings about a sense of warmth in the story. And so he's got the face of an old man, and he's got the rest of his body is a spider, is a giant arachnid.
Oh no!
Essentially,
what a different character. That's so different. Oh goodness.
I love him, and he's large enough to ride on, which is really fun, So if they're kind of dashing away from the army, the opposing army, he assists with that and all of that good stuff. And then his kind of sidekick, his name is Edwin, and Edwin is a reanimated. So this is kind of dark, but stay with me.
Okay.
Essentially a corpse, or he was, who was found by a witch, and he was kind of Frankensteined, if you will, with parts of a scarecrow. So he's got skin made out of burlap, and he's got button eyes, and so he's kind of like this living doll, or like this animated scarecrow. But in his past life, he at one time was human. So. And there's Edwin.
So he's a little Frankenstein-ish meets zombie-ish, kind of.
Esque, yeah. He's an animated scarecrow, and he's kind of buddy with Mr. Trinoshka, my big spider guy, and they are the comedic relief. They're fun, and Edwin's got a little bit of a speech impediment too, so he's just I think he's a very endearing character. I think they both are. So I think those are my weirdest characters. Yeah.
Yeah, you've gotta have some quirkiness, and you've gotta have the comedy. It always breaks up when things are really, really bad, and then someone just says something totally off the wall or a little bit rude. It's kind of funny.
You need that exhale, you need that breath of air, because you've been holding your breath for so long. So yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
All right. So when did you say the next book is coming out, or you don't know when the next book is coming out? Look, I keep going back to this because I want to know. next book is coming.
I want to know too. No, you know what? We are actually in the process of formatting the first book for hardcover, which is really exciting. I'm really, really thrilled about that. The audiobook just came out last year. Joel Frimkin, who's my narrator, did a fabulous job. I'm such a fan. He's an amazing actor. I can't speak his praises enough. So we're reformatting book 1 to come out in hardcover and all of that good stuff. And then I am focusing on my rewrites for book 2, which will come out spring of this year. Book 3 will pretty much stay the same. There'll be a couple of new content changes and things like that, and that'll come out fall 2018. So book 4, we're probably looking at spring 2019 is the most realistic time frame. Yeah.
So with your hardcover refresh, are you getting new cover art? Because I'm like a sucker for good cover art. I'm not going to lie. I'm a sucker for it every time.
Me too. And actually, that is my bread and butter when I'm not writing. I am predominantly a cover designer. Fun fact. I just got done working with Charles Bridge Publishing on their new YA title called Twice Dead. It will be in stores 2018. Charles Bridge is distributed by Penguin Random House, so that's really exciting. So I just got done designing that cover, and so anyway, and I do covers for independent authors as well. That's kind of my day job.
Oh, that's fun.
Yes, yeah. So
very cool.
Yeah, I love it. It's such a passion of mine too, and so anyway, long story short, I am a sucker for covers as well. And I've probably changed the Of Light and Darkness cover a good 5 times.
Wow.
The life of it. But anyway, I think I've finally settled on the one that is live now on Amazon on the Kindle book. So if you go to look for it, there's a very attractive, in my opinion, vampire man on the cover. And the Prague landscape and all of that. And so that will be the theme for the rest of the covers. Different characters will be featured and all that good stuff. Yeah.
I'm liking it. Okay, so I am an avid audiobook listener. Mm-hmm. I think that audiobooks are a very important part of any healthy literary diet.
Oh, yeah, totally.
So tell me, who did your audiobook for you? Who published it for you?
Definitely. I actually went through ACX for it, which is, of course, I think it's Amazon's audiobook arm, for people who want to self-publish their audiobooks. So it's ACX, and so I did what most independent authors did. I put out my audition, and out popped Joel Frimkin, who, like I said before, is just absolutely fabulous, and he did all of the voices, even the female characters, which, when you get into the story, you completely forget. I mean, it doesn't even faze you that it's one person. It really feels like there's so many people in your head as you're listening. And so I actually also have a background in film science, and I do a lot of video editing as well. And so as I was listening to his first rounds, if you will, of narration, I thought, well, wouldn't this be really cool, if I went in and edited the audio and added sound effects and music? Like, would it be too much? Would it be really cool? And he was kind of unsure for a while because he thought maybe it would complicate things, and he wasn't sure how readers or listeners would digest that. And so I did a sample, and we put it up for a group of beta listeners. And they all thought that it was really interesting and really different. And we did get some naysayers, like I prefer just narration, which is totally fine if you do, but I always like to be a little different. And so
it's amazing.
Thank you.
I've got to check this out. I've got to check it out because I love it. I love when there are different things. Like sometimes, this isn't full cast, but sometimes with full cast, you get a little bit of sound effects, a little bit of music, and it's different and it's fun to mix it up.
Yeah, I just think it makes it more cinematic, and it makes the experience a little bit more immersive, which I love. So I hope you do check it out. I think it's something that you might like, because we spoke a little bit about your love for paranormal series and stuff. So I added all of the beast growls and the music and super ominous moments and everything. And I mean, I'm of course very biased, but when I listen to it, I get totally sucked in. So I can't wait to do the next installments.
So I'm assuming this is going to be available on Audible. Yeah?
It is. Yes, it is.
Okay. So definitely, guys, check out the sample on Audible and pick it up if you love audiobooks like I do.
Please.
And so when is the second one going to be done? See, look, I'm already like on it. Like, what's the second one?
The second audiobook?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I plan on getting that going as soon as the book 2 rewrite comes out this spring. That will be in the full swing of production. So, actually, if you guys want to, just Google me or look me up, you'll find my blog. If you want to subscribe to all of that good stuff, you can do that. And I promise I will keep people updated on all of that. But, it won't be long after the release of book 2 of the book 2 rewrite. So,
probably
that's
this exciting.
Summer. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share? Any last tidbits about your series before we sign off for the evening?
Not too much. I really hope people give it a chance. I think that it's different. When you say vampire series, a lot of people go to very popular vampire series that exist out there. And of course the market is saturated. But I think what makes this different is the setting and the folklore, the fact that it takes place in Prague, which is, a place that you don't really hear about too often in especially in like young adult or new adult fiction. And just that there's a lot of different creatures, like I talked about earlier, just a lot of different things going on. And it's like, 20% steampunk and 40% paranormal romance and whatever else. Nice. I mean, it's just a little, it's eclectic, and I think that it's really different. So I hope you guys check it out.
Awesome. So everyone, be sure to follow Shayne all over social media. Check out her first book of Light and Darkness. Definitely give a listen to the audiobook. All of her links are in the show notes below. It has been a pleasure, Shayne. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Tamara. It was a blast, and I absolutely loved starting my new year off this way. So very, very honored. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for spending the time with us tonight here on Book Chat. Thank you for streaming, downloading, and as always, happy reading. Take care, everyone. If you enjoyed today's Book Chat episode and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. Head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review. You can follow me on Twitter at Shelf Addiction. Most importantly, you can share this podcast with friends and family that enjoy all things bookish, including author interviews. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.